shit. I told you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Guild Night. My name is Maria Laura. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am extremely excited and thankful for the space that we have tonight. Tonight's talk is pretty much run by an amazing woman that I met. She is not just talented, but she is extremely warm, friendly, lovely, and I'm super excited to have her tonight. Her name is Malia Mason. She is a manager of governance risk strategy at RSM. She worked previously as a vulnerability manager at Disney, and she is the co-founder of Cyber Day. Cyber Day is a pretty amazing organization that helps pretty much any type of, I would say, person that loves cybersecurity without really identifying anything about where you're coming from, who you are, just focusing on having an open conversation about cybersecurity and supporting everyone that wants to have a conversation and learn more about anything that's related to security. So I don't have much information because I really want you guys to get to know her. Before I forget, there are a few things that we have we need to go over for our guild members. Chris will be going through those announcements at the end of the talk after we do the Q&A. So please hold on, don't go after we finish the talk. There's a few things that we want to make sure you guys know. Shamir, hi. Chris said he was going to say it. Besides that, I don't have anything else. Like I said, I'm just super excited to have this talk, to let Malia get to know you guys or talk about this information, which is a very interesting topic. And I'm not going to take more of your time. Chris, if you want to run the introduction, go ahead.
Hello, welcome. Like the amazing introduction I had from Maria, my name is Malia, and I'll be talking to you tonight about deepfakes. Deepfakes, disinformation, fake news, and what I want to get into first is what the heck are deepfakes?
To help families refinance their homes, to invest in things like high-tech manufacturing, clean energy, and the infrastructure that creates good new jobs.
You see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele.
It's sort of learning to recreate that person's face by looking at the thousands of images over and over and over. like a lot more research than you would think would go into making a goofy video or something like that.
Truly surprising for me. Yeah, I was just really surprised.
I didn't do any after touching on that video. That was just using the technology that was available from the machine learning side.
You don't even have to know what GitHub is. You don't have to know how to program in Python. None of that matters. You pay somebody $20 and they'll create the fake for you. That's a bit of a game changer.
You know, the everyday person who the deepfake sex video emerges in a Google search of your name, where for that person, it becomes almost impossible to debunk.
While I don't think that's likely, I also don't think it's out of the question. And that is enough to keep me up at night. The margins are very, very thin. The last national election here in the US was 80,000 votes in 3 states. You don't have to fool tens of millions of people.
I don't think a deepfake will become a big political issue during the course of the campaign. Think about a well-placed rumor before an IPO. I think a lot of these things were problems already. And so it's unclear to me how much machine learning really, adds to those problems. I find it very difficult to sort of believe that there is something so uniquely devastating about video.
Right now, what we are focusing on is developing forensic techniques to protect world leaders from deepfakes. We are particularly worried about how the Donald Trumps, Theresa May, and Angela Merkel's of the world, how their likeness will be used to disrupt elections and incite potential violence in countries by creating fake content. There's some fun and entertaining, interesting application, but there is a weaponization of the technology. And I simply advocate that we as technologists, we acknowledge it, and we start thinking not after the fact, but before the fact, how can we start putting some safeguards in place?
All right, now this video was made in 2019. And as you can see, the election was at the forefront of everyone's mind. Now, let's get into the technology of deepfakes. So it's a 2-model learning. You may have seen something like this actually on TV. It's based on deep learning using AI and machine learning. It uses the generative adversarial network, which was developed in 2014 by Ian Goodfellow. Commonly used in remastering older video games, as you can see in the top right. I'm a huge Mass Effect fan. They just came out with a remastered Mass Effect. I haven't looked into the technology, but I'm sure they used this type of technology in order to make it easier. They also use this in common movies. If you need to de-age someone, it's actually easier than CGI. So it's a 2-model. And what it is the 2 computers, they learn from one another until eventually one model can fool the other computer. And then you have a deepfake and you have the forgery. Originally, it took weeks, super expensive hardware. You had to have a really bomb GPU and CPU to create a really good fake. However, now it's a little bit more accessible. And like I said, we're using this on TV. This is a common thing. And funnily enough, last year, this was utilized in commercials when we had COVID, especially when you couldn't get your actors in person, anything like that. So watch this next video, see if you can spot it.
We've sourdough'd and ukulele'd and self-portraited, but those days are over because live sports are back! And so are ads for live sports. So dust off your bright green jersey and tell the world what you're supposed to say, according to the contract you previously signed.
Hulu has live sports.
Hulu has live sports.
Hulu has live sports.
Again.
That's right. Hulu has live sports again.
Yeah, we just said that.
All right, did you catch it? That was a deepfake. That was a deepfake video made by Hulu because the athletes that they were supposed to have in the videos were in their bubbles and, wherever, baseball, basketball, whatever, and they couldn't come to Los Angeles to film, so they deepfaked the video. Now, the problem is this information doesn't have to be high tech to cause serious damage. More commonly, what we're seeing is something called cheap fakes. And this is kind of a spectrum. You have on the left-hand side here, deep fakes. That is the really serious, your Disney studios, your movie studios, et cetera. That is like the really awesome stuff. Yes, Disney has an entire deep fake department. That's what you're seeing there. And as you go along the spectrum, you have face swapping, voice synthesis, lip syncing. Then you start to get into what's called cheap fakes. This is way more accessible. This is where you have again, face swapping, slowing down video. There was famously a video that was shared a couple years ago where Nancy Pelosi was so-called drunk, and all they did was slow the video down a little bit that made it look like she was slurring her speech. It was just a cheaply altered video. That is still considered one of the deep fakes, but a subset of cheap fake. So the other fakes, cheap fakes, shallow fakes, face anonymization, dubbing videos in other languages. There was famously a politician in, gosh, it's escaping me now, on the African continent where he pretended like he knew all these different languages, and they actually dubbed over and did a deep fake of his mouth and made it look like he spoke all these other languages fluently, which then attracted him to voters, and they voted for him because they thought that he spoke their language. That came out later. That was not true. Creating artwork and popular face swapping. Also face generation. You probably have seen this with some apps. Famously, Mark Zuckerberg was deepfaked, joked that he's an android. This was for one of his speeches. This was deepfaked and made it sound like he was saying something else. This painting was actually sold at Christie's auction house for $435,000. This was a deepfake. What they did was they put in this algorithm. You can see it in the lower right-hand corner of the painting. And they studied paintings from, I think it was all in the 1600s, fed it into their machine learning algorithm, and created this deepfake portrait that mimics the style at the time. And another one is we have the face anonymization. You have the original, the woman on the left, then you have the woman in the right in the box incorporated into the woman's face, and now you have a completely different person. Now, let's talk about the specs. It's easy, y'all. You probably have seen these apps in the App Store. The Face app, where I remember this was popular a few years ago. Everybody was posting about, hey, this is what my baby will look like when I'm older, or this is what I'll look when I'm older. Turned out it was a Russian company, might have been kind of shady. Reface. This is so popular. I see this in my Instagram feed every once in a while, where people will put their face into a popular movie or TV show, whatever, and it looks pretty real. And you can see here, you don't even need to have a good device. You can actually do this on the cloud. So here you can see this is actually, these two screenshots at the bottom are from real websites where you can just pay $2 an hour to create your own deepfake. They show you there to create a good video, takes about 4 hours, or just doing a face swap is 30 minutes. So imagine with just $8 what you could create. Now, unfortunately, the majority of deepfakes that have been used, 96% of them, or 96% of the deepfakes were porn, 99% involved women in entertainment. This is still true. The majority, vast majority of deepfakes are of women swapping them on bodies. It famously started with, some person on Reddit releasing some celebrities' nudes. That all they had done was just swap her face, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman. That's where it started. And then afterward, it led to the leaking of several other celebrities. Initially, it was only the female celebrities that were targeted, but now anyone can be a victim of a porn video. You can make your own, or again, you could pay a few dollars to somebody to create this. And here you have a few examples. You can see that's on Pornhub, and you can see it's very popular. This is showing the popularity of the search term for deepfake porn. Now, Pornhub supposedly banned deepfakes. However, as we see, this is not the case. This is still a very popular thing. And you can see that's a real Twitter account. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's been taken down several times, but it keeps popping up, or the algorithm will just morph into something else. Now, this also calls into question the legality of deepfakes. And here are a couple of articles. A lot of times overseas, what is happening is women who are in either a position of power, journalists, politicians, their likeness is being used in these deepfake porn videos posted online, and absolutely lose control over them. Now, the biggest problem is that deepfake skirt laws, they're not real. They're not the woman's body, and the host site is not accountable. So, and it's also impossible to know the creator because it was anonymously uploaded, or you could just claim, oh, I didn't make it, I just found it. So there's not a real good way of, trying to combat this. Now, California and Virginia passed laws right before the election back in 2020, making deepfake porn and election videos illegal. However, it's extremely difficult to enforce. And there's a lot of stories you can look up of women trying to take down deepfake porn videos that have been posted. We're also seeing this rise in revenge porn. I don't want to say just ex-boyfriends, but predominantly ex-boyfriends will upload deepfaked porn videos of their former girlfriends onto these sites, and it's extremely hard to take down. All right, so that was depressing. How do we fight deepfakes? So there are several initiatives. These are great. If y'all want to take a screenshot, I can provide this afterward. Microsoft announced last year, and this all developed last year, by the way. This is super new. Microsoft announced the Microsoft Video Authenticator. That's a pretty decent one. DARPA has a whole initiative. You saw in the video when we started, DARPA is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into combating deepfakes and finding a way that we can defend against them. So that's, and they're funding all sorts of research projects all around the world. There's the Spot the Deepfake quiz. That's a really fun one. You can see how good you are at spotting the deepfakes. Spoiler alert, I did not get 100%. So these are really, really good, but you get good as you practice, you get good kind of spotting them. The Washington Post has a fact checker guide. A lot of the major newspapers have fact checker guides. There's also the News Literacy Org. Oh my God, I'm forgetting, of course, right now. But that's a fantastic one where they post information. I actually share it with my followers on Instagram. I try to share to the public, hey, here's how you spot these things. MIT has Spot the Deepfakes. That's a really good one too. That's really fun. There's a Content Authenticity Initiative, and then Which Face is Real? We'll play with that one in a minute. At the end of the day, you too can fight deepfakes. Stop. You just gotta pause. Stop and consider the source. Is this from a weird source? Who is this? Is this some random, I don't know, like X-ray technician sharing about very advanced mRNA research and about how, the studies weren't properly followed? Well, that's not their expertise. Maybe consider another source. Corroboration. is anyone else sharing this? Is any other credible source sharing this information? You can look at the AP News. That is strictly neutral down the line. All they do is report the news. I like NPR myself. Pick something that's super neutral. And are there at least 3 others? That's kind of my threshold. Are there 3 other credible, reputable news sources who are sharing this information? Blinking. That's how you can get it. Remember the Hulu video. Is the person in the video blinking? Because the problem is a lot of the times what they do is they take still photos, and who has a photo where they're like this? Normally your eyes are open during photos. So that's a good way that you can tell, is this a real person? Because the vast amount of photos that they're going to feed into that machine algorithm will have all eyes open. Blur. Do you see a blur around the edges of the face or lips? So far, fingers crossed, technology is not good enough to get it so that you don't miss the uncanny valley around your mouth and your lips and around your chin. So here you have your lips and chin, and you have your eyes are the best way that you can tell. Check your facts. Check to see if the video is, if there are any credible fact-checking organizations who have investigated the video. Again, that's that corroboration. Confirmation bias, check your own bias. I have a cat, I love cats. If somebody shares some sort of information that says how I am a much better person because I have a kitty cat, well, that's true. But also, of course, I'm going to have a bias because I have a cat. So I'm going to more likely to believe that story that says that I'm a better person because I have a kitty cat because I also have a cat. So check your biases when you're looking at these things. And if something seems too outrageous to be true, or too good or too bad to be true, probably is. And wait, just wait before you react or share. Give the experts time to evaluate it and check back. Social media makes this really challenging because now when Facebook introduced the like buttons, how many years ago? Now every website has it. And so it's really easy just to do a like and move on, or a share and move on. It's way too easy, and that's how disinformation spreads very quickly. And if you can, try to gently fact check people. If you see some disinformation in your newsfeed, gently check them. I've done that for the last year, and fortunately I've been able to bring a couple of my friends back from the brink, and now they're checking and they've learned, oh yes, let me check that with sources first. All right, so let's test what you learned. Who do you think is real? Is the person on the left. Person on the right is fake. Now this is on a big screen. You had time to look at it, but imagine her photo was small. Maybe it's on LinkedIn. Maybe it's on a YouTube channel. Maybe it's on an Instagram. Could you tell? All right. So what about the election? Well, why spend a lot of money on fancy tech when you can just post memes? Social media was ripe with disinformation. It's very easy, like I said, to like, click, share. Even all the YouTubers, what do they do at the beginning of the videos? Like, oh, remember to strike the bell and like, share, whatever. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Reddit, TikTok, all of them were utilized in the propaganda and disinformation campaigns. In 2016, IRA's 470 Facebook accounts made more than 80,000 posts. And that reached at least 29 million Americans and almost as many as 126 million people worldwide. That's 470 accounts reaching 126 million people. So here are key terms to know. IRA, the Internet Research Agency, also known as the Russian Troll Farm. The GRU, that's the Russian military intelligence. QAnon, bots and botnets, trolls, cyborgs, that's a combination of fake and real content, keyword squatting, impersonating real companies and people, catfishing, phishing. My cybersecurity people should be familiar with those terms, and sock puppets. So again, you've been in the industry, you should recognize these a little bit. And for those not in the industry, if you have taken any cybersecurity training, hopefully you have, you should at least recognize phishing. All right, so these two terms get thrown out a lot. Disinformation is deliberately false information that is covertly spread, and it's in order to influence public opinion or obscure the truth. Misinformation, that is incorrect or misleading information that's inadvertently sent. Usually it's innocuous. Somebody just doesn't have the full facts, whatever. They didn't mean to share it. Disinformation, they have every intent and they mean to share it. So make sure, even in the news, they get the terms wrong. Disinformation versus misinformation. Now, here are 7 different types of misinformation and disinformation. A lot of times, The Onion, that's misinformation, y'all. That's a satire parody. I'm a military veteran. I love Duffel Blog. It's so funny to me, the things that they post, because a lot of times it's a little too close to the truth. Same with The Onion. A lot of times, like The Daily Show or Saturday Night Live, they fall into that misinformation category. Then you start to move along. You get the false connection, you get misleading context. Then you start to get into false context, taking things out of context, taking little sound bites from people and then warping it to a way that shapes or supports your particular view. This happens a lot in politics, in news shows, whenever they have a certain agenda. Imposter content, manipulated content. Again, that was that Nancy Pelosi video where they slowed it down just by a little bit to make it look like, appear that she was drunk. Or when I believe she was also targeted in a nail salon or something like that. And what they had done is they had cut out the clips to make it look like she was doing a certain thing. This has been done throughout history. So this is nothing new, y'all. This is out in the playbooks. This has been, for a very long time. It's just that in the age of the internet and digital media, this can share and spread a lot faster. So I want to talk real quickly about QAnon. Likely the majority of you have heard of it by now, especially after, the Capitol storming. This is kind of an interesting group that has come to light. So how it got started, some of you might be familiar with 4chan. That's kind of like the weird dredges of the internet. There's some weird stuff on there. But in October 2017, an anonymous user put a series of posts on 4chan. They signed off as Q. They claimed to have this crazy level of security clearance known as Q clearance, and after that, started sharing these weird info drops, and then they became known as Q drops. Some of the things that they've been associated with, Pizzagate, they believe in this thing called the storm. Also famously in January of this year, they stormed the US Capitol. So the storm, they believe that there's this imminent event known as the storm, when thousands of members of the cabal will be arrested and possibly sent to Guantanamo Bay prison, or to face military tribunals, and the US military will brutally take over the country. The result will be salvation and utopia on earth. And yes, I did have to write that down because it's so wild. I wanted to make sure I read that off correctly to y'all. Now it started in the United States, but this has spread worldwide. In Germany, for instance, one German group adopted QAnon to promote its belief that modern Germany is not a sovereign republic, but rather a corporation created by the Allied nations after World War II, and expressed its hope that Trump would lead an army to restore the Reich. Not joking, y'all, real. In Russia, there's a similar conspiracy theory, the Union of Slavic Forces of Russia, or Soviet Citizens, which claims the Russian Federation is a Delaware-based LLC that occupies the legal territory of the Soviet Union. The movement has also spread to Spain, Latin America, Costa Rica, Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, Paraguay, and Brazil all have presence here. Now, Russian Twitter accounts amplified early Q messaging, making sure that it spread everywhere. And now you can see QAnon posts on Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. They love Telegram. And they actually got pushed off of 4chan and moved to 8chan. They are popular with far right and especially with Trump supporters. And people relate it similar to a religious cult. They've actually started, some countries have actually started designating them as a terrorist group. So here are a couple of headlines. And you can see this is a serious thing. Now, one thing I wanted to share with y'all is kind of a, I guess, a personal story. I've actually helped a few people recover their accounts when they've been, so-called hacked or taken over by their QAnon family members. One person had, his mother had succumbed to the QAnon conspiracy. Oh my God, doesn't matter what she believed, but she ended up getting into all of his accounts. She actually installed video cameras, had surveillance on him, all kinds of crazy stuff because she believed whatever kind of conspiracy. And he lost control over everything because he lost his Google account. It affected his work. He ended up getting fired. Absolutely devastating. And this was, lost control of the accounts. Now, this should be familiar to those of us in cybersecurity. Secure your accounts, make sure that everything's good to go. Similar sort of deal where his identity was stolen. So I helped recover all of his accounts and, taught him, hey, let's use multi-factor authentication. Let's use a better password. Here's what to look out for. And, change the default password on your router. Again, this should be familiar to all of us in cybersecurity. The basic rules can still be applied when it comes to this, but that's not the first individual that I have worked with where they had their entire lives disrupted by someone in their world, either their family or their friend who had succumbed to the insanity that is QAnon. And QAnon, they prey on the people who they feel isolated, they feel lonely. It's very cult-like because they just get you in, they grab you by one conspiracy that might sound a little bit true. That's how all conspiracies start, right? It sounds a little bit true. Then they start to feed you all these other things, and they feed and prey upon your feelings of outsiderness or otherness or loneliness. And I love this quote from Claire Wardle. She's a disinformation researcher. I said, this isn't just about funding more news literacy projects. This is about teaching people to second guess their instinctual reactions. If you find yourself incredibly angry at a piece of content or feeling smug because your viewpoint has been reaffirmed, take another look. And let's get facts to go in here to back this up. Here is an MIT study that looked at Twitter. And they focused on Twitter from 2006 to 2017. And they saw that about 126,000 rumors were spread by 3 million people. False news reached people more than the truth. And the top 1% of false news reached between 1,000 and 100,000 people. True posts rarely reach more than 1,000. Falsehoods also diffused faster than the truth. And false political news traveled more broadly, reached more people, and was more viral than any other category of false information by a long shot. And I love this stat. Falsehoods were 70% more likely to be retweeted than the truth. I know some of us in cybersecurity love Twitter. However, like anything else, take everything you read on there with a grain of salt, because how easy is it, again, to like, share, repost, comment, tons of disinformation there. And that is actually a popular spot for disinformation to spread. Why is that? Bots and botnets. So let's talk about how bots and botnets work. So you have sock puppets initiate the conversation, seeding new ideas and driving discussion on online communities. So let's just say I'm super famous or mildly famous, whatever. I'm on Twitter and I am quoted saying something, and all of a sudden they were like, oh man, Malia pronounces GIF with a soft G, like GIF. Can you believe this? So the ideas are then amplified by tens of thousands of automated accounts. They're called amplifier bots and reshared. What they might say is, oh, can you believe this? Malia pronounces it GIF, it's supposed to be GIF, and how dare she, should have known anything about technology. Those reshare the content, but then you also have approval bots who then engage with it, because you have to look at the algorithm depends on engaging tweets. So what they'll have is you'll have a whole botnet who then will approve or engage with those tweets. They either liking, retweeting, or replying to enhance credibility, and it gives legitimacy to the idea. So you'll see, one account you might think it's real. Maybe they pulled a face from the "is this person real" site, and they were like, oh my God, did you see the news? Malia pronounces GIF wrong. In hotly contested topic areas like GIF versus GIF, bots are also often used to harass and attack individuals. Maybe I have some followers and some friends who are like, what do you mean? She's in her own right to pronounce it as GIF because choosy moms choose GIF. That is a proper pronunciation. What they'll do is they'll brigade and they'll hide, they'll overtake, they'll downvote if you're on Reddit, and they will overtake those posts in order to share their own view and push them out of the conversation. The goal is that they want real social media users and people with large followings to share the idea, eventually get to someone like Bill Gates, who then reshares and be like, did you hear the news? That idiot Malia pronounces GIF like GIF. What a moron. That's how it happens. That's your end goal. You want a legitimate reshare of a falsehood, and then it gets out of control. So let's look at a real example here, because that was ridiculous. So in 2020, there was this thing called the Sonoma ballot dumping. And there was this post that came up. It said, oh, California man that found thousands of unopened ballots in a dumpster. Workers are trying to cover them out. Are these returned ballots from 2018? And started this whole drama. This account, Election Integrity, oh my God, I just forgot their name. They were tracking election falsehoods. But what they picked up on was that on the morning of Friday, September 25th, conservative media personality Elijah Schaefer, who has over 248,000 followers, tweeted an image purporting to be thousands of mail-in ballots in a dumpster in Sonoma County, California. Implication, hey, election fraud, all this other stuff that's been purported for years. And it's trying to fuel this disinformation campaign into election fraud. In reality, the images were ballot envelopes from the 2018 election that were being recycled in accordance with state law. There was nothing wrong with it, but they took it out of context. Here's the thing. Here you can see the timeline from over on the left-hand side at 0, 8 hours, it starts to be picked up. You see within 16 hours, this thing is shared 20,000 times, retweets, quotes, tweets, and everything. So it took less than 24 hours that this took off. And that's the problem, is that this stuff can spread like wildfire. And unless there's any sort of fact checking, then this just goes out into the wild. And this actually got picked up by conservative media. And then even through the rest of media, they put out a fact checking post and said, no, this isn't true. Even the state of California had to issue a response to say, no, this wasn't true. This was in accordance with state law, etc. Another thing is, let's talk about voter suppression. So let's talk about the use of social media and disinformation campaigns around voter suppression. Russia's Internet Research Agency, remember we learned the term IRA, which US officials indicted in 2018 for attempts to manipulate the 2016 election, borrowed heavily from the Soviet-era strategy of seeking to exploit American racial division to deepen unrest during the civil rights movement and afterward. Y'all, they're literally taking the same playbook that they've had for decades. They're just reapplying it using technology. And what they did was they targeted Black voters in 2016 and the 2020 elections. And actually what we saw was in 2016, for the first time ever, Black voters actually reduced. We saw a reduction of Black voters participating in elections. What Russians did, Russian operatives portrayed themselves as Black Americans, using accounts such as Blacktivist, Black Matters US, etc. And they purported the myth of, oh, our votes don't matter. And they urged Black voters to skip the election. There was even an Iranian disinformation campaign, used a phony website called blmnews.com. Even a Romanian network of accounts focused on the November election by highlighting fake African-American support for Trump. There were tens of thousands of Twitter accounts claiming that they were Blacks for Trump. We saw this with the LGBTQ community. We even saw this with women. So they targeted the underrepresented and minority communities, claiming that they were for Trump. It's all bot farms. And one fantastic quote from this disinformation researcher, Dean Freelon: the use of digital blackface is the most effective disinformation tactic. And here's another one. We saw even LeBron James was targeted. And there was a tweet that went out that said that he was claiming, oh, you know, don't go vote, whatever. And he was like, wait a minute, no, this is BS. Please go vote, etc. That actually happened last year. Fake Twitter accounts, and you can see these are all headlines from last year around the election, and they were picking up on Black Lives Matter movement. We saw this attacking Antifa and all this other stuff. And many of the accounts use profile pictures of Black men taken from news reports, other sources. Again, that this person isn't real website is a great resource for creating these fake accounts. Now, one thing that we saw last year, and for anyone that's tuned in for my talk before, hey, new information. We saw last year the rise of disinformation in languages other than English. This was a first. And this report actually just came out just recently. Just 12 people are behind most vaccine hoaxes on social media. And you can see here is, you know, an analysis of the sample anti-vaccine content that was shared or posted on Facebook and Twitter, total of 812,000 times between February and March, shows that 65% of anti-vaccine content is attributable to disinformation. That's what they're linking these 12 people. And you can see, maybe you've seen this. I've actually seen this post before, and this is shared. I believe the one was saying, oh, you just got to gargle with salt water, COVID will go away, whatever. This one in the middle was, oh, you use a hair dryer and that will get rid of the COVID vaccine, it'll protect you. I've seen others where they're purporting some natural Chinese medicine. We saw this with the chlorohydroxyl. This actually, what was interesting was this Chinese diplomat. He's actually the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China. He posted this article, very much important to each and every one of us. And this was China trying to respond to, no, it wasn't, this wasn't created in This didn't come from China. This came from the US made it or whatever, just trying to spread disinformation and trying to, change the feed into the, where did this, was it created in a lab, all of this stuff that was going on. And actually what we saw was China, they blocked Twitter, y'all. They're not allowed, you're not allowed to use it behind what's nicknamed the Great Firewall of China. So what we're seeing is that Chinese diplomats and embassies are using Twitter. And we saw an explosion of Chinese diplomats and Twitter usage in 2019 and especially in 2020, actually 300% increase since April of 2019. And what's funny is that that blog that he linked to is actually a Russian blog. Now, there was this campaign that came out, Basta Facebook, and this is a fantastic group where they looked into, hey, what the heck are you doing, Facebook? You're not blocking information that's in other languages. And that's where we saw last year absolute explosion of disinformation in other languages. We saw significant delays in implementation of the anti-misinformation policies. It takes up to 22 days for the platform to downgrade and issue warning labels on content. And here's the thing, Facebook has not yet issued warning labels on 68% of Italian language content and 70% of Spanish language content, compared to 29% of English language content. So you can see over here, this is the percentage of fact check content where they have not provided false information, warning labels. So the thing is social media, and this is not just Facebook, y'all, this is Instagram, this is, I believe we saw this on Twitter as well. This is all the social media platforms. They are not checking this in languages other than English. And we saw last year that was taken advantage of. And we saw a ton of campaigns in languages other than English. And we actually saw this worldwide as well. Here's another thing to think about. There are only 2 major Spanish language broadcast news networks in the United States, Univision and Telemundo. This leaves room for media operations, not just on the internet, but also via local radio channels and newspapers to spread less accurate reporting, according to a major Spanish misinformation researcher. And I actually read an article yesterday, I didn't include it, but apparently in Miami, there is a very controversial radio host who is spreading all kinds of racist and awful content, and she is still active. So here you can see the timeline. So this is very similar. Remember I showed you the tweet where it exploded after just 24 hours, and that was only what, 20,000 retweets, reviews, whatever. Here's what happens when it takes this long to put this information on here. You can see when it was first posted, after day 2, it had 7.5 million views. You first get a fact check. However, by the 22nd day, it's finally flagged as false, but it's already reached 33 million views. You have copycats, people repost it under different things. And that's the problem, is timing is everything when it comes to disinformation. By the time it's already reached 33 million people, the damage is already done. And I loved this quote from Vincent Pan, executive director for Chinese for Affirmative Action. It's not that we have a WeChat problem or WhatsApp problem. These platforms are accelerants. It accelerates a lot of vulnerabilities that Chinese and other Asian immigrants with a limited English proficiency have. They live in scarcity under tremendous social and economic pressure and uncertainty. Now, this information isn't new, y'all. I said this before. This has existed for a long time. If we take during the AIDS epidemic, gay men were depicted as deviants. We also had, that so-called welfare queen, a racist trope that rose to prominence during the 1980s. You also had Japanese Americans who were held in internment camps. So again, y'all, this whole disinformation, we can actually track this throughout history. The problem is that it is perpetuated quickly on social media. Now, one thing, I'm talking about all this stuff, like people are quick to click on things. They're quick to, read things and trust them quickly. Now, for all of us in cybersecurity, this should sound a little bit familiar. Let's go fishing, y'all. Social engineering and phishing attacks. Okay, so what is social engineering? That is the manipulation of people to divulge personal or secret information. Again, disinformation, deepfakes, you're trying to manipulate people. It is a form of social engineering. Now, it's used to it's used in targeted phishing campaigns. You know, you'll see like, oh no, your Microsoft password has been compromised. You need to change it immediately. Well, it's not a legit link. They're just trying to get your password. What's their goal? They're trying to get usually money. Sometimes they're just trying to get information. Sometimes they're trying to get company secrets. Sometimes they're trying to get into a company and infiltrate it in order to execute a ransomware attack. Sometimes it's just for the lulz. Sometimes in the case of my poor unfortunate person that I helped when their QAnon mother took over their accounts, it's either revenge or it's a nefarious, you want to cause harm to the other person. Lots of different measures, almost all of them nefarious. Here's something again, the IRA, we learned that term. They use generic names or mimicked existing accounts to, different political grassroots community groups, as well as candidates. An example is they mimicked the official account of Bernie Sanders' campaign. So you see Bernie 2020 versus Bernie.2020. And again, it's used to try to take over and try to change the topic or try to sidetrack that. One thing that we're seeing, here's the first that we know of, deep fake attack in the cybersecurity community, is the threat actors were able to use AI in order to mimic the CEO's voice. They called into the company using the CEO's voice and got them to wire $253,000 before the company finally got wise and they were like, wait a minute, this probably isn't legit. They had actually done it multiple times. They did first 20,000, then 60,000, and they kept getting bigger and bigger. So they got greedy and they were finally like, whoa, wait a minute, this probably isn't legit. And so they were caught, never got the money back. They never caught the people. So this is a thing, is that this is being utilized already in the cybersecurity world. Now, we're also seeing this on LinkedIn. Now, let's look at some examples of social media or social engineering attacks on LinkedIn. This is a common thing. I think we saw just recently, there was a massive scraping of information on LinkedIn. Lots of folks will pose as, either a recruiter or, oh, you're, a lot of times they'll attack and go after government officials. They will, pose as like, hey, I'm this such and such person. I work with the NSA, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, you have mutual connections, and they start small. And what they want to do is get to either the head of the NSA or one of the big targets. And here we have this fantastic article. Chinese intel analyst describes his LinkedIn addiction every day. It served up new targets. Now, seems legit, right? We all should recognize this on the cybersecurity field. For anybody who's not, we've seen these common scams and we educate our users to be observant. So just in case we have non-cybersecurity folks here, basic tips. 93% of attacks are still through phishing. So I know I'm talking about like deepfakes and disinformation, all this scary, crazy, wild technology. It's still really simple. We're still missing the basics. We're still having clicks. So for everybody on the call, again, the same way that you can combat deepfakes, combat phishing, apply the same rules. Pause. Look at it critically. You see it says MS Team, Outlook, Message Center up on the top. Well, it's actually coming from Office 365 protectionservices.co.uk. It's not a real domain. That's not a real thing. If your CEO is emailing you from a Gmail account, that ain't real. That's not your CEO. That's somebody else pretending. You can see, they'll use like threatening language. Here we see, they'll be turned off immediately. They usually use the tactics where it makes it look like, oh, there's an imminent threat. I gotta resolve this now. They want you to drop your guard. They want you to respond quickly, and not use your brain. And what you'll see a lot of times is spelling mistakes. You might see different font. You might see different, use cases. Here we have a grammatical error. That comma should be over. A big company like Microsoft is not going to mess up this stuff. You'll see a fake email signature. Here's another one. Sometimes they can spoof an email account. When you spoof an account, that means you mimic it, so it can make it look like it. I remember one of my friends texted me one day. She was like, why are you trying to scam me? You sent me this thing that sent me to this site that wants me to buy weed from this shady site. And I was like, girl, that wasn't me. Your account was compromised at some point, because what they can do is you can scrape your own email list, and they just use they use your own email list that they've gotten, and can pretend like your users. I'm a trusted user. I'm a cybersecurity professional. You should trust everything I send you, right? You should never verify that what I sent you is not legit, right? Because I'm trustworthy. Well, she clicked on it. Then we had to talk about about email security. But here you see, hey, password expired, blah, 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 go here. Again, take a moment, hover over those links, pause before you click on something, verify. If someone's asking you to buy $500 worth of gift cards, hey, maybe call that person. Maybe say like, hey, did you really want $500 worth of gift cards? What's going on? Stop and pause. And here's another one. Again, it's a spoof. A lot of times they'll use like, oh yeah, here is your here's your invoice, please click on it. And who knows what that link could be. It could be something that's going to run a bad file. It's going to run either key locker, anything like that. Just please don't click on things. Pause, take a moment. And it's the same deal, like I've been saying. There's the same way that you can fight phishing emails and fight that is stop and pause. Take a look at the source. Take a look at the history. Does this particular source have an agenda? What subjects do they regularly cover? Check the evidence. Is there any other sort of evidence that backs it up? I checked a lot of vaccine disinformation posts that I saw on my social media feed in the last year, because I said, hey, let me do a quick Google search, and here you go. I have 3 resources that say that is false. So I usually use the 3-source rule. Does it rely on emotion? Is it trying to get you upset? Is it trying to validate your biases, validate that? Definitely check for sensational, inflammatory, divisive language, and pictures. Look at what the picture is portraying. Is it showing things in a certain way? Take a look at that. I love Mike Caulfield. He's at Holden on Twitter. He's a fantastic disinformation researcher. I like his SIFT. Stop, investigate, find trusted coverage, trace claims, quotes, and media back to the original content, and just take a moment, take a breath before you stop and share. All right, y'all, that is it. Hopefully I covered everything, but you can follow my org, Cyber DEI, on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can also join our org. We welcome everybody. We say cybersecurity is for everyone. So at all levels, we welcome everybody to our group. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you want. Use that social engineering. And yeah, hopefully y'all have some fun questions for me.
Okay, let me double check with Chris if we are both live or not. Chris, are we good to get the Q&A started? Awesome. Well, that was a lot.
Right?
It was a lot. Extremely, I think what shocked me is how relevant everything is. I know we talked a little bit before we started, and you were mentioning that you keep this presentation up to date pretty much as you can, because there's so much information every day, all the time, and just trying to come to I would say a stage where you can keep up. It's very difficult because it keeps changing constantly all the time. But again, I was blown away. It's so much, and it's something that really impressed me is it's in every area of our lives. If it's health, if it's just regular sales type of thing, if you want to shop, if it's government, if it's everywhere. There's like really not a sector that is not that's being there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what we're finding is it's an easy way to infiltrate, right? Is even some cat meme accounts. You'll see where what we'll see is they'll take legitimate accounts and they'll take accounts that might have been older. We actually see this really prominently on Reddit, where they'll have older accounts that are from originally in 2008 or whatever, and they'll actually buy them. This is actually a common marketing technique that is also utilized in disinformation. And they can buy these old accounts. It makes it look like they're trustworthy. They were like, well, yeah, this must be legit. This account has existed since before the election, so they must know. They're not here to try to trick me because they formed an account during the election. But that's what they'll do, and they'll change it. Instagram actually introduced a new method where you can actually go into the account and you can see the about, and you can see if the account has changed their name. And I've actually been able to pick out a couple of accounts tried to follow me, and I looked at okay, who do we follow, or who's in common, whatever. Who are they mimicking? And that was something that they added last year. And I took screenshots and I posted that information on social media to share, hey, look, this is a way that you can see, is this account legit? And one of the accounts was something about, I don't know, some political account that tried to follow me. And it turned out that their original account was like doggies in Cornwall. That was the original account name. So they clearly were a dog account at one point in their history, and they had bought it out and wiped the whole thing. There were no doggies in Cornwall on the site, and it was all just political garbage. And it was all trying to attract a certain kind of person, and trying to feed into, they probably saw in the algorithm, oh, I'm a woman, I'm in my 30s, I'm in LA, all of the different things I clicked on. I liked an AOC post at one point, so here we're gonna try to get at her, and try to get this fake political account that originally was a doggies in Cornwall account. So there are ways that you can sort of check, but it's really hard at times. You're like, is this real? What's going on? So you got to stop and pause.
So, and I think that's just outside of human behavior with just technology. We don't stop. Like, nobody's going to take the time. And I think that goes into how are we behaving online and what are the things that we're actually doing. We honestly are so bombarded with information that we just have time to, like you said, just check out the meme, have fun, laugh it off. And then if it's funny enough, you just share it. If not, you forget it. But that's something that we are also not used to changing our behavior, to actually take the time to really think, how is this information affecting me? And is it true? And we're 100% biased on the things that we like. We will not verify it, right? I like it. I feel okay. It aligns with what I think. Why would this be fake? So it's very tied to human emotions and behavior, for sure. I'm not going to doubt or second guess something that I feel comfortable with, or that it aligns with the way I think.
Yep. And they use that against you.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm a veteran, and our community is usually political football, right? Where we get utilized a lot, and like, oh no, how dare Colin Kaepernick kneel, and it's so disrespectful to veterans, when in fact it was actually a veteran who told him, hey, if you kneel, that is the most respectful display. And so it just perpetuates they feed into your background and your history and your stereotypes, and they get ways to dig their claws into you, and then it just spirals down into this whole disinformation zone, and it's so interesting.
So quick.
Yeah,
like you said, once it's out, it follows emotion, so you're not really taking a moment, and it just it's out there, and then it's everywhere. It's a lot. I do have a bunch of questions, so sorry.
Yeah, let's go.
I just wanted to talk to you a little bit into the questions. So the first question that I have is, so what do you do when your own government engages in mis or disinformation?
Yep, we actually saw this with in India with the farmer protest. What the heck? The country, they had a massive propaganda campaign, and they were absolutely suppressing anything that was in support of the farmers. And you saw even Mina Harris, who is Kamala Harris's niece. She and Rihanna famously posted in support of the farmers' protest, and all of a sudden you saw wildness across. You saw Bollywood actors and actresses, you saw politicians, you saw everybody suddenly trashing Mina Harris and Rihanna and spreading all kinds of disinformation, and it was all state-sponsored. So yes, it's very, very difficult. How do you fight the propaganda machine that they invest billions of dollars into this? And you got to start small. Don't think big. Don't think, oh my God, I got to fight the government. Start in your own community. Talk to your immediate family members. Talk to your grandparents. Talk to your cousins. I love that in the military, one of the things we always talked about was bystander intervention. Don't stand by. Say something. When something happens, stand in and say something. And I'm one of the most vocal people. People always know I don't care. I'll say something and check them. And that's how we saw the rise of the AAPI hate and discrimination and the absolute awful abuse that the AAPI community faced in the last year and this year. Bystander intervention, y'all. How many videos did we see where people just stood on the street while they were beat down? If somebody were to step in and help out, hey, we stop that from happening. Same with disinformation. Stop the spread. Stop this from happening. Have a conversation with your immediate family members and stop it, and try to be that stopgap and hey, no, that's actually wrong. Here's why. And don't approach it as hey, you're wrong, you idiot. How did you do that? Say, hey, I don't think you're sharing information. You might have been misled. Here's some other facts. Here's some other sources you may want to check. I think you might have mistakenly shared a false post. There you go. No harm, no foul.
Yeah, I guess it's just like anything else, trying until at least you're trying to in a small environment, or whoever is in your small group. That's where the real change can start.
Yeah,
that trickle down effect.
It's very grassroots. You got to start. If everybody did it.
Yeah. I have another question. This is coming from YouTube. Are there any studies to determine if foreign language disinformation campaigns are written by natural speakers, or if the statements or phrases are crafted by non-natural foreign language speakers?
Oh, this was interesting. So I followed this last year. We actually see that the Russian government, so we talked about the GRU and the IRA, they are now outsourcing their campaigns to other countries. So we actually saw a rise of the bot farms and the propaganda campaigns move to Africa. And they are outsourcing their campaigns and their operations to different countries. That's why we saw Romania. So yes and no, it's a mixture. And this information, like I said, this is fresh. All those studies that I presented to y'all is within weeks old. So I know I was following all my researchers last year. They were seeing it personally what's going on. So hopefully we'll have some more numbers as we continue to study it this year, especially with the ongoing worldwide vaccine disinformation. But it's a mixture. The Russians got really good at perfecting their English to make it sound not like ESL English, like native speaking English. Now they're doing the same with the other languages and not sounding like, hey, I'm a white American woman who studied Spanish for 4 years in high school. They taught me the proper Spain, whatever Spanish, and I don't sound natural at all. They are moving to, let's learn the lingo, let's use, slang words and stuff like that and sound like, maybe that's your tío, maybe that's your cousin. Oh yeah, that's how he speaks. This must be legit. So they are learning and they're very smart about that. But they're using a mixture. And again, there's some people where what they ultimately want is they want legitimate people sharing false information, because then every time it's shared, it's kind of like whisper down the lane. The language changes a little bit, and it gets shifted until it's in that natural language, and all of a sudden you're at you're at your cousin's first birthday party and your tia is talking to you about some wild thing about chips being in the vaccines and that's why she won't get the shot, and 5G and Bill Gates and all this stuff, and you're like, drink another margarita, what are you doing? Like, this is insane. How did you do this?
It's kind of funny that you say, especially because English has, I want to say like 4 different or 5, like you have the British, Australian, Canadian, but Spanish, there were so many different countries that it is so difficult to pinpoint one. It has to be so relevant to each country. And you're definitely right. Whenever they're using a specific slang, I know if it's Colombian, if it's targeted to Paraguay, every country. So Spanish is even a more challenging way. So when I've seen, I would say like special like news or videos, it's very difficult for them to have something that affects all. So they have to like break it down on like different type of slangs or scenarios or areas, right? Is it more like the South? Is it more the West? Or is it more, is it middle class? Is it women? So they break down depending on different other factors, just because language is so broken down different parts. English is different, right? Like you said, we're taught very formal English, and you can definitely tell if it's slang or more flexible or more like streetwise. I don't know. Until this day, when somebody's speaking not fast, but they're speaking in so many different ways that they can express their mind, it's not proper English. So I have even a hard time kind of like trying to get my head around to understand what they're saying. But other languages, when more countries share the same language, it's more difficult because each version of Spanish, I would say in this case, is so different from each other. It's still the same language, but the tone, the words, the expressions, cultural reference are so different. So that's very interesting that you made that.
We actually saw this with the Asian languages as well. Same deal. That's the dialects. It's the different areas. It's whether or not you are pro-China versus not pro-China. So there's a whole different ways of speaking as well there. And that's actually what a lot of these, you saw the Ya Basta Facebook, that was a group trying to fight this. There's another group in the AAPI community, and they're talking about, hey, it is so difficult to fight disinformation because the variant degrees of all of these different languages that it's hard to track. And one positive note is that one disinformation researcher said that with a couple of lines of Python, he was able to parse through 28 million words of this particular kind of rare dialect, and was able to utilize that in order to automate fighting this disinformation. So again, technology can have its good. Again, it could be good, could be bad. It's neutral. It's the Force. You could either be a Jedi or you can be a Sith. You know, it's how you utilize the Force, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, another question coming from Discord. Do any of the popular video editors have built-in deepfake detection algorithms like some do against currency manipulation, or does the federal law need to get passed first?
So, yeah, we would love to have a federal law. Adobe, actually. Adobe created, there's a really phenomenal video. You can see it on YouTube. Adobe debuted this thing a few years ago, and I watched it, where you can manipulate audio and you can manipulate video real easily in their Adobe editor. And that ended up, of course, being utilized for nefarious ways. So Adobe actually founded their own foundation and changed their tool. So then that way it can fight the creation of this media. However, we saw you can create this in the cloud. There are all sorts of copycats. There are all sorts of ways that you can create this. A lot of times it's like, oh, I just want to create it for fun. So it's hard to bridge that gap between what is fun, what is, putting Nicolas Cage, his face on another celebrity's face, and what is, hey, let's put the president's face and manipulate him and talk about launching nuclear weapons. There, again, slippery slope. It's hard to say because one is like under the Creative Commons creative license and free speech, et cetera, et cetera. The other is hard to say. So we're trying to keep up. Technology right now is sort of able to detect a deepfake, but we're right at that threshold. We're just about to the point with technology where computers are being fooled more and more and more. And we are almost, researchers predicted this year, we will lose the capability to have computers regularly be able to detect these deepfakes.
Well, that's not very encouraging.
I know. Such a downer.
At least we're having a real conversation. Okay. Sorry. Let me go back. I have too many windows open. That's another verse of our current reality. I think this is tied a little bit to what I just mentioned. It says, should the government be involved in regulation or managing fake news? I'm thinking about Facebook, Twitter, or efforts to take down false information.
So it's challenging. In America, at least, we have, we have the Bill of Rights, we have the First Amendment, and you have all these different laws that protect speech. That's where it gets really tricky because groups like the KKK are still technically protected under the First Amendment. Whether or not they are assholes, that's, whatever. But the thing is that their speech is protected. Now it goes up and against if it's hate speech or not, but that's the problem, is the ability to say whatever you want is still protected, and it depends on how you're classified. Famously, Fox News was sued, I want to say, within the last 5 years for spreading false information, and their lawyers successfully defended that it is not a news company, they are an entertainment company, and so they can say whatever they want. When it comes into play, then it gets challenging, because where's the edge of what is entertainment, what is news, how do you classify that? That, unfortunately, that case kind of opened the door for a lot of other news organizations to pop up. We saw Breitbart, et cetera, to spread this information protected under, we're just an entertainment company. Right now, some of the members from the Trump campaign are being sued because they spread false information about the voter boxes. Well, their defense is, well, who would believe us? That was such a crazy lie. Like, no reasonable person would actually believe us, trying to save themselves for millions of dollars. So it's challenging. How do you write a law like that without stepping on the rights to free speech. So it's a debate right now that's happening in the legal side of things, in the technology side of things. There's talks about, do you regulate social media? It's really, I don't think there's a good solution. And I don't think we really know yet what does that solution look like. I think there needs to be more oversight. Facebook clearly isn't cracking down on these things and they're not handling it correctly. But what does that look like?
How much responsibility would you put on the reader or the user to actually and this is pretty much because whenever you are forget about social media, forget about anything that's posted, right? There has to be some, and in the past, just legally speaking, you are responsible for whatever you do, right? I cannot claim I was forced or I was deceived. Like, you had some intention, you have some participation. So do you think in one point the user can be also responsible for not fact checking and not doing the due diligence to know if that is actually correct or not?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're responsible for our own actions. And if you don't do your due diligence, you don't fact check, you do something, and let's just say that leads to you storming the Capitol and illegally being on government property, yeah, you're going to face the consequences. So yeah, to some extent, you need to be able to critically read the information that's put in front of you. And I think that's one reason why I will always advocate for those of us in the technology sector. Y'all, we need liberal arts students. We need liberal arts degrees. We need to have liberal arts classes. We need to study and critique these novels, because that's what's taught to us, right? It's like, okay, read this dense novel from whatever and critique the novel and see, okay, what is the author saying? Let's dig into the text. And that sort of the critical reading and comprehension absolutely needs to be universal. Everybody needs to be able to say, like, okay, what is really being said here? What's going on? You can even call back to maybe in high school you had to study poetry, right? Didn't we have to interpret what is Maya Angelou saying in this poem? What's going on here? And then you have to look into what context, what time did Maya Angelou write this poem? Where was she in the country? Was there something major going on? Was there a massive Selma march? Then you start to put into the pieces, and then you start to see, oh, I get it. I see why she wrote Why the Caged Bird Sings. It was in reference to this. Here's the context. And then here you start to have that critical thinking. And I think that's what we need to apply, those same liberal arts critical thinking skills to the rest of our environment. Again, back to phishing emails. Critically look at the email. Is this legit? Does this look real or not? Look at everything with kind of a skeptical eye, and double check your sources.
It's kind of funny because every time I try to make this point, I get a huge pushback that it's whoever we're consuming information, they're responsible for that, not the end user, which for me is like, well,
a little bit of both.
Like if I cross the street and someone is trying to like BS me on something, like, am I gonna believe it? I think when you're facing a screen and you don't have a human talking to you, you don't feel you don't have that instinct of distrust. If you're talking to a person, you have a little more of a reaction than would you just receiving information through a screen.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, what we'll call like keyboard warriors who they're real badass when they're on a keyboard. However, get them in a real life setting. Are they really gonna spread that vitriol kind of language, whatever? Yeah, maybe not due to peer pressure, et cetera. But I think that's something that we see a rise in is, again, these communities and online where y'all might have heard of, say, incels. They're the involuntarily celibate males who think that women owe them sexual pleasure, and they're very angry about it. Actually, literally just yesterday, there was a plot that was stopped by the FBI where a so-called incel, 21 years old, was doing surveillance on Ohio State University, and he had planned to murder 3,500 women at least, because he felt that it was his revenge on these women for not sleeping with him. So that's the kind of thing, is when we have these isolation chambers and when we have these echo chambers, and Facebook is one of the ones where they have all these private groups where there's no visibility, there's no transparency, and you have these echo chambers of disinformation and hatred. We saw this with the, even before COVID and everything, the anti-vax movement, where they were spreading the disinformation that vaccines cause autism. We saw that actually spread with the mommy groups. And so there we go. We have so many examples of disinformation that's in echo chambers around the world. And what people do is if anybody pushes back, they disconnect from them. It's easy to cut off your friends on Facebook, whatever. And if you're in this private group where no one else can influence, you can sort of weed out and cull your own sort of little group who thinks and looks and does all the same stuff as you. Well, again, echo chamber, you only hear the same thing over and over. That then reinforces your not so nice or biased or negative or any sort of viewpoint. You never hear the fact check or the other side. So that's, and we see that perpetuating. That's how this disinformation spreads.
Scary.
Yeah.
Okay, another question coming through. Have you ever made a deep fake?
No, I have not. I just refuse to. I don't trust the apps. I'm such a, like, it's funny because my boyfriend is an app developer, so he has every app in the world and I do not. So I just don't trust any of these shady apps on the phone. Again, free, you get what you pay for.
Fair enough.
How are you paying for thing? It's free. What are they taking instead?
Fair enough. Okay. Has there been known any cases of NFT deepfake yet?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I have opinions on that. I think it's a scam. I think it's a fad that, it'll eventually die out. But yeah, there are easy ways to scam people with that. So please watch out. Watch what you're paying for.
I think, okay, so I have another question relevant to a little bit of the medical side of things that we were talking. It says, how can we help prevent spread of misinformation related to medical deepfakes?
Yeah, so I actually saw this with some of my friends last year, and it's weird because we saw with the same communities that were affected by the same type of like QAnon disinformation was either like the far left hippie natural medicine, yogi kind of community, and then you had the alt-right community. It was really interesting because both communities were affected by the same disinformation tactics. So one of my friends falls in the first community. He's very into the whole natural medicine sort of deal. And he started to share these reports about, oh, did you see from random doctors, maybe it's like a chiropractor, or maybe it's like a holistic medicine doctor, something like that. All of a sudden they're experts on the mRNA vaccinology. What? No, what are you doing? Like they don't know. Their particular route of medicine is just that particular route. They have no clue this mRNA thing, which is so new that there's only a select few people that even know about it. So they're all of a sudden now talking all this, using all this medical terminology that, again, the average people don't know. So they just assume that, using these big medical words, that must be legit. The person has doctor in their title. This must be a legit person. And they share a simple Instagram graphic that talks about how, the COVID vaccine is untested and it was rushed and it causes testosterone to decrease and aborts fetuses and like all of this other like doom and gloom stuff. And I saw when he started posting these things, and I immediately DM'd him and was like, hey, so you probably didn't mean to share this, but I just wanted to let you know that this is actually false. And again, you approach it in a nice, like, approach it in a way that they're not necessarily nefarious. Like, hey, you idiot, you're wrong. That's stupid. Who would believe that? No, approach it as, hey, you probably didn't mean to, but here, this is false. This person actually isn't an expert in this field. Here's their background. I researched this. Here are actually 3 websites and 3 news sources that debunk that. Here are ways that in the future, you can check your sources and check before you share, because this is actually dangerous information that you're sharing, and this can actually harm people. And I related it back to my boyfriend who's immune compromised. We were waiting for the vaccine, just absolutely because we were so scared what happens if he gets it. And I was like, again, related to family, related to personal, like, hey, you're literally putting people at risk. You know, check your sources ahead of time. And over time, it took him a few months, and it took me continually reach out. But eventually he was like, stop sharing it. He was like, you know what, thank you so much for opening my eyes and for sharing this. And, you know, you were right. And he ended up getting the vaccine. And it took some time and it took some patience, but I was able to break through. Now, not everybody's able to break through, but if you try to do that friendly reach out again and again and again, and do it from a, hey, you probably didn't mean to. That sort of approach, I found that worked. And I did that with a bunch of other people too. And I found that was a really good way to do that. And what I did is I was like, hey, it's your friendly neighborhood cyber woman. I'm going to share cybersecurity tips on my Instagram. It's the only social media that I kept after I got rid of everything else. And I was like, here you go. I'm going to share like a weekly tip of what to do. Here's some cybersecurity tips. And what's cool is I have friends in my DMs who aren't technical at all. And they'll ask me like, hey, I got this thing. Can you talk to me about it? Sure, let's talk about this thing. You start that conversation. Again, you start in your community. You start small. If any of you are in cybersecurity who are listening, y'all are the experts. Y'all are the tech experts. You need to be in your community. You need to be talking about these things. You need to make this normal and make this a normal conversation. People joke, they were like, Malia, you just eat, sleep, and breathe cybersecurity. You never stop thinking about cybersecurity. Yeah, and?
Yeah. Awesome. I think at one point that tactic can feel, I would say, a little overwhelming. Just combating relatives. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But you're right. If we don't do anything about it, nothing will change. So you're not part of the solution, then you shouldn't be complaining about the problem.
Yeah, and it's again that goes back to that what I said before, bystander intervention.
Yeah,
you gotta step up. You see something, say something. I don't remember if I shared with y'all, but my dad was actually diagnosed with advanced Parkinson's several years ago, and I served in the Navy from 2011 to 2015, and I remember in 2016, I think it was. Before QAnon, before all this garbage, he shared with me a video from YouTube. And he said, look at this, is the real truth of what happened when you were serving on those ships. They lied to you. And I looked at the video and I was like, really, Dad? My dad is an electrician by trade. He's a very smart individual, brilliant man. Parkinson's ate away at his ability to like critically think about things, and YouTube fed into that because the YouTube algorithm, I know y'all are watching on YouTube, but the YouTube algorithm is so broken that it feeds into that. So as soon as he watched, like maybe he watched a video from the official US Navy channel, this video was one of the recommended ones. Well, then that started a whole downhill of all of this garbage, controversial conspiracy theory videos that to this day, I haven't talked to my dad in about a year because he is now, it's nonverbal. He's so far down the hole of, you know, believing in these conspiracy theories and in his own world that he's unreachable. He'll, like, I think the last time he talked to me was he texted me at 3 o'clock in the morning with an incomprehensible text about some wild theory. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing? Are you okay? And that's it. So that's the thing, is like, that's actually what started my interest in this thing called disinformation and this thing called all these deepfakes, and, you know, started to research, how the heck did this happen? What did this do? And that was, again, 2016, before we had all these terms. I was researching, like, what is this? How did this happen? Who is this? Is this a thing? What's going on? And here we go, uncovering all of this garbage. And so that's where I've kind of made it my mission, like, okay, well, I lost my dad to disinformation. I don't want anyone else to lose a family member, to lose someone they're close to this disinformation. So I will continue to fight the fight and spread, you know, the ways to combat it, not just the doom and gloom, but here's ways you can combat it. Here's ways you can go about it. Here are friendly ways. Here's ways you can pull them back from the brink. And hopefully no one else will lose their family member, and we can all go back to being family again, be happy with each other, and not spreading weird batshit rumors at Thanksgiving.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that super personal story that really puts things in perspective. And it is true. When it directly affects you, you have a different, I would say, point of view, different strategy. You kind of understand a little bit more than, oh, it's just it's not real, don't pay attention, it doesn't really matter. When it actually does, depending on the person, their situation. You are 100% absolutely right. There's some people who are more vulnerable, some people who just believe things that they say, some people who are really impressionable. And that feeds into if they're afraid, if they're, I don't know, biased, if they're isolated. You never really know what's going on people's lives. So I really appreciate your effort in this like friendly way of approaching it, instead of like going into a full fight and like you're stupid. I think we're all so prone to just have a difficult conversation instead of saying, hey, you know what, I also thought this, but this is what I found. Again, it's just really easy to misjudge people through a screen.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is just have empathy, right? Is like my mom died in 2016 of brain cancer, and then like the same year, right, I start to lose my dad to YouTube. I'm like, oh, what the hell? So this is that sort of thing where I could get really angry about it. I still don't like YouTube, but it's one of those things where, okay, you can be angry about it, you can be upset about it. How do you change that? My granny always said, leave the world better than you found it. And I've always tried to live up to, you know, her phrase and her ideals. And how am I making the world a better place? How am I making sure that those who follow behind me have it easier? That's, you know, in the tech world where, you know, there's not a lot of us underrepresented folks. How am I making it so that they have an easier time of it? And also, how am I making it so that other people don't lose their family members like mine did, or like the several people that I've helped where their family members have succumbed to QAnon? And, you know, how do you pull them out of that cult? Because it is a cult, and that's really, really challenging. I think there's a lot of things that are going on right now, a lot of efforts into how do you decultify these QAnon members and get families back. So that's a really challenging aspect I think we'll be dealing with for a very long time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think talking about it is the first step to kind of like knowing how to deal with that. Moving to the next question. We've seen a number of far-right examples. Are there also far-left examples of deepfakes and disinformation, or is disinformation a feature of one of the pole of political spectrum? If not, what deepfakes or disinformation have you seen on the other end?
Yeah, so we're seeing the vast majorities on the far right. However, like I gave the example, we have the far left. We actually saw this with the so-called Bernie Bros. There were all kinds of disinformation and craziness that came out of some subset of the, self-called Bernie bros. Also, again, that natural, holistic, whatever medicine, it was actually the kind of the more affluent white woman community where they were all about their yoga and their, again, all the stuff that goes along with it, the crystals and stuff. We see this in LA where I'm at, up in Beverly Hills and in Orange County. And again, that's sort of like, oh, we're into the natural stuff. They were also affected. They were equally, and that was a really interesting study where they saw that they were equally affected as those on the very far right, because they use the same tactics. They were like, oh no, the government, we saw this with the anti-mask movement where they were like, oh, it's not natural to wear a mask. Oh, the government is making you put these chemicals in your body that are untrusted and blah, blah, blah. And they shared all this doctored images and doctored information when it came to like, oh, here's the ingredients list of the vaccine and oh, how bad is this? And there was the joke that some accounts were kind of making fun of that, where they were saying, oh no, the vaccine has hydrogen dioxide in it. Oh, it's so dangerous for you. Who would ever use hydrogen dioxide? When that's like everywhere, and it's like, but it sounds scary because it's a big science term.
Yeah.
And it's a big medical term. Oh no, what do we do? So yeah, we see this, the two ends, and that's actually how you had a lot of the kind of like hippie, free, natural, whatever community, they got sucked into Q.
Yeah.
Same deal with the far right. And it was really interesting because again, the same tactics where as long as you're on the far extremes, they're able to pull you in because you are on the extremes of society. They take advantage of your otherness and your loneliness, your isolation, all that sort of stuff. They start to feed into the government's making you do these things and telling you how to live your life and blah, blah, blah. And yep, as we see it. We saw that actually the Russian propaganda machine fed into the Bernie supporters from the 2016 election as well as the 2020 election and convinced all of them to vote for Trump, the vast majority of them, because they were like, Bernie or nothing.
Yeah.
We're not going to vote for Bernie or anybody else. We're either going to sit home, we're going to stay home, or we're going to vote for Trump. They actually convinced those folks who Trump was right, the antithesis, right, of Bernie.
Yeah.
But they used the propaganda and they used the campaigns and they fed into their biases and everything to then say, oh, well, we hate the other candidate, so we're just going to vote for the other candidate in spite of this candidate.
It's kind of like binary type of choice, right? It's like corner people into such a way that they, even if they don't want to, they feel like they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Okay, another question coming up. Can you clearly determine what's being shared for this disinformation versus misinformation on social media? Are the two mutually exclusive? What metrics are usually looked at for that distinction?
So it's kind of hard because, again, misinformation, as we saw, misinformation was you don't mean to share it. You don't mean to post something. If we recall, that's something like The Onion, Saturday Night Live, it's parody. So that kind of the spectrum gets a little weird when it goes into, okay, what is just, a parody? What is something you didn't mean to share? What is something that maybe you got a fact wrong here or there, but you didn't mean to, versus, oh, you completely altered and you are meaning it for harm. That's really challenging. What we see a lot of times is the real accounts, that's real individuals, that's real people. They're more likely to share misinformation than the bots, of course. Like the bots want to share the disinformation. That's what they're meant to do. So we see a lot of humans get caught up in this thing because they think it's real and we can't tell, is this real? Is this not? Whatever. For the most part, there are certain studies that I've read where vast majority of humans, we don't mean to share this stuff, But again, it feeds into our biases. So it's hard to see where's the edge because it gets real fuzzy. How many times have you joked where you're like, man, the Onion is closer to the truth than it is the parody?
Yeah.
Well, where's that line, right? Where's the line where the dog meme site that you post all of a sudden posts about, I don't know, maybe the dog meme person that you follow makes a post about, resharing for visibility about vaccine information.
Do you think putting like under everything disclaimer, this is my personal opinion, I actually don't know what I'm talking about. I actually thought about it. Just like the big fight with cigarettes, at the end they were forced to put in the box, hey, this can actually kill you.
No, because we actually see, if you see on Twitter, anybody that you follow that is from either a politician or from a major company or whatever, like, oh, this is my personal Twitter account. What I say doesn't reflect the company. They think that that's just sort of a broad stroke, where we actually saw call outs where they either made misogynist or racist comments on their personal Twitter. Then you saw that it actually violated company policy. They were fired, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So no, saying that, oh, it's just my personal opinion, blah, blah, blah. Nah, that doesn't protect you at all. And that sort of opens up the door of, well, it's my opinion that vaccines aren't great.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't mean anything.
Okay, last question coming from YouTube. How can we keep our personal profiles protected? Is two-factor authentication enough?
Yes, so depends what you mean by personal profile. So if you are, LinkedIn is the hardest one because, right, you want it to be open, you want people to find you, you want to find a job, blah, blah, blah. Just please, for the love of God, do not put your phone number on there. Don't put your email on there. Maybe just put the general region. I have like Greater Los Angeles area. Try to limit the exposure of your publicly searchable information. I do a lot of talks, so unfortunately, I'm pretty easily searchable, but there are ways that you can at least limit your exposure. 100% enable multi-factor authentication on everything you have. Use that. One of the things I like, there are some, there's the, the Microsoft Authenticator app, there's Google Authenticator app, Duo, Okta, Auth0 or Auth. There's a bunch of different apps that you can use to do, again, just one more, strike of like, hey, is this really you? So utilize that, enable that on every single account. I recommend use a password generator. So I personally like Bitwarden. That's a password. What do you call it? What am I trying to say? Password manager. And that's the way it generates a password for me. So literally every single website that I have an account on, it's a different password for every site. I don't have to remember them. It's secured through my, again, multi-factor authentication. I have my one password. And then that way, that's a lot easier than I don't get into the habit of resharing I love tacos 92 across every single website. It's a different one. And if you can, make your social media accounts private. My Instagram is the only other social media account that I have that is absolutely private. I have that locked down. You can't friend me unless I know who you are. So just make sure that you're keeping that on lockdown, because again, there's a lot of these public places, and be careful like who you're sharing it with. I have actually had several recruiters in my DMs on LinkedIn. They're not legit. Check to make sure who you're speaking with is an actual real person. There's a lot of scams on LinkedIn, so please be careful. Double check this person. Do they have a certain amount of followers? If they're a recruiter, they're going to have a ton of connections. They're going to be posting a lot. They're going to have a picture. They're going to have a reputable company. They're going to be making a lot of posts because recruiters have to be sharing. They have to be advertising. They have to be doing these things. So if you see a recruiter, they got like 5 friends. They don't have a picture. The picture looks real generic, and they're not really talking with folks. I
would say good rule, stranger danger. That's what I would say.
If it feels weird, it's probably real.
Yes.
Like trust your gut. At the end of the day, like you can do all these other things, but man, if you're just like, this person just doesn't seem right,
Yeah,
trust that. Don't
absolutely.
question your gut.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that I have from YouTube and Discord. A
Great
few-
questions.
Absolutely. I think we can like spend pretty much the entire night
yeah.
talking about this in hours and days. And I just want to give a few more seconds to just double check if no one else has a question before we wrap this up and say thank you to our wonderful speakers this evening. Nothing? Let me double
Yeah,
check.
while we're waiting for the questions to come in, if they do come in, Malia, great job. Absolutely
Thank you.
fantastic. The guys from the Neon Temple, a couple of them are traveling, and we're doing this remote, so I'm filling in tonight, but fantastic job. We will get you your poster shipped out.
That was so cool. I'm wearing my Wonder Woman
Yeah.
shirt, y'all. So excited. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of doom and gloom, and there was a lot of like scary information. Yes, deepfakes and disinformation, it's very scary, and it's something, again, we'll be studying this for a very long time. But again, you have tools to fight it, y'all. Stop and think. Use the same tools that you've been using in your cybersecurity, like your everyday, what you do. Use those same tools and just use the small bubble effect, right? Affect your local community, your local immediate family member, immediate household. Let it spread from there and let the ripple effect. And if all of us do this, grassroots, right? This will start to combat this, and this will start to stop the spread of this disinformation. So just get yourself out there. I know not all of us in cybersecurity want to be that into this sort of thing, but stop your grandma from saying this garbage. Come on. Check your grandma. Be like, Grandma, go back to bingo hall. Quit. Get off of social media.
Damn,
Go
they're
do something
hard.
else.
They're a tough.
I know.
Jesus Christ. I don't want to mess with any grandma for sure. Well, like Chris said, we are so thankful that you were able to join us tonight. You're more than welcome to come back. Doors are open. We again, like I said when I introduced you, anyone that I've met through Sour Day has been wonderful. I really appreciate our partnership, friendship, and just the openness that I know I can reach out, ask you any questions, and you're so open to have any type of conversation. So I really, really appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That poster was dope, y'all. I can't wait to put it on my wall. Coolest thing ever. But thank you so much for letting me share my passion project with y'all.
Perfect. Are you okay if we share your presentation within the guild? That's something that we want to make sure it's available. As you said, you're on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm pretty sure after tonight, some people are gonna start following you. So they're real people. Don't be afraid.
I'm gonna do OSINT on all of them. So
there you go. There you go.
Send me a message if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message along with it. I reject a lot of people, so let me know you're a real human. Shoot me a message. Be like, hey, I saw your presentation. I'll friend you.
Okay, perfect, great. Well, this is I want to say goodbye. I know Chris has a few announcements, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for a wonderful talk. And like I said, you are welcome any day, anytime, any month that you want to come back.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye. Chris, you're up with guild updates.
All right, guys. Well, like I said, Tremere and John and Trey are not in the same location as I am, so we've got a couple of updates. Well, just for legal purposes, I represent that company, not that company. Well, this company, but not that company. So we just wanted to let you know that we've got some. So next week's talk, Lux is doing another talk. It's kind of a follow-up to the talk he gave, I want to say 2 weeks ago, last week. It's called Darknet Collections, and it's for members only. There's no guests. I guess we're going to get into some of the spooky secret stuff that the dark web has to offer. The next thing is that the Neon Temple swag is available, and it's the neontemple.com/guild-swag. So they've got some hats, they've got some shirts up there. And then also later on in August, Sunny is going to be doing her API hacking, a couple API hacking classes/workshops. So don't miss out on that. And I think that is about it. So we will see everybody next week. Have a good night.
Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman. All the world is waiting for you and the power you possess. Make a hawking dove, stop a war with love. Make a liar tell it true. Wonder Woman, get us out from under. Wonder Woman, all our hopes are pinned upon you and the magic that you do. Stop a bullet cold, make the axis bold, change their minds and change the world. Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman, you're a Wonder Woman.